was a moment in Western Bulldogs history, 6 decades in the making.
Good kick, gives Pickett a chance. It's over. It's all over. The drought. The damn wall is busted. It's 62 long years.
From the outside, the 2016 AFL premiership was unexpected. The Bulldogs had just scraped inside the top 8, battled injuries and overcome the underdog tag. But behind the scenes, there was much more brewing. A new path in the partnership between the Western Bulldogs and Victoria University.
In terms of the 2016 premiership, do you think sports science played a big part in that win?
I think it did, yeah. So we used the relationship with VU a lot of the time. So the facilities that we didn't have here, we could go over to VU. So we had, plus the students and the staff that were working here, so it had a big part in what we did in 2016.
Matt Innes runs the high-performance team at the Bulldogs, a part of the club that is growing at a rapid rate.
Does it amaze you, perhaps, how far science has come over the last, say, decade?
It does. I know when I started here, we had one staff member who was pretty much 1 day a week, and now we've got something like 25 to 27 people who are here either full-time or part-time, so it's changed a lot.
Are other clubs following suit?
I think so. You see other clubs who are starting to get relationships with universities, so other clubs are definitely catching on. Ours is pretty well established, so I think we're hopefully ahead of a few other clubs, but yeah, you never know.
It's easy to see why. From the joint facilities and resources to the expertise of a variety of university staff and PhD students, it adds another dimension to elite sporting clubs.
Anything from skill acquisition, so looking at how players perform on the field and their skills, right through to GPS tracking and also in the gym as well, so analysing how they're going in the gym and coming up with new ways to train them in the gym. So there's a heap of stuff that they have access to.
From the academy to sub-elite and elite, the athletes are being given more and more exposure to sports science as the university minds and any visiting international students help build a strong research culture.
It's been great to see the students evolve as well and grow and to build those relationships and contacts and hear about what other teams are doing. Like the NBA, for example, there's some cool stuff happening in the analytics space there. Major League Soccer is another one. So, it's great to have those contacts and really leverage them for the partnership too.
Well, I think it's improving both organisations in many ways. For us, it's really helping us think about things in a more innovative and progressive way, particularly with on-field performance. But even if we talk about the community aspects of what we do, it does actually help validate the strength and benefits that our programs deliver.
Amit Baines joined the Western Bulldogs as CEO at the end of 2017 and says while other clubs across the country are joining forces with universities, it's the long-standing relationship between VU and the Bulldogs that's the advantage.
I think it's an amazing partnership, amazing in many respects. Obviously the longevity of it, 25, 26 years in, but also the breadth of the partnership. That's probably the thing that amazed me most when I first started. It's obviously got a strong football performance and sports science element to it, but these days it straddles all parts of the organisation.
In Footscray, there are plans to redevelop the precinct connecting Victoria University and collaborating further in relation to health, sports science and research.
In terms of our partnership with VU, it's really looking at how we expand their presence on site, but also looking at other ways in which we can conduct cutting-edge research on site. So it may be in a health setting.
Beyond the science and technology and away from the game of AFL, a number of Western Bulldogs players are also studying at the uni, including Zane Cordy, who is in his 3rd year of a Bachelor of Business.
My brother finished biomedicine while he was playing footy, so I sort of went down his path and said I need to do something outside of football, just in case everything doesn't go that well. Nearly finishing uni, it's been a great step for me and hopefully I can continue further.
In just his 11th career game, Cordy won a premiership with the Bulldogs. He is now one of the senior defenders in the side and admits over the span of his career to date, the game and those working in it has evolved.
it's become very scientific in terms of GPS, our recovery, what we eat, how much sleep we need. It's all based on numbers these days, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, but we've got a lot of people who have come from VU into our club who are studying, doing their masters, and they seem to know what's going to be the best for us to play better, to end up hopefully winning another premiership. But it's been all very good to incorporate that into the club, and it's making our standards go higher and higher.
It's a cracking story, this, and we are welcomed in the studio for more by the President and Chairman of the Western Bulldogs AFL Club, Peter Gordon. How are you, Peter? Good. And also Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University, Peter Dawkins. How are you, Peter?
Very well, Tim.
And I'd like to start with you and ask you the question, where was the genesis? Where was this whole idea born?
Well, Victoria University is based in Footscray, which, of course, is where the Western Bulldogs are. And there's been a relationship between the university and its predecessor institutions going back for 30 years or more, and sport has always been a strength of Victoria University. It's one of the leading sports universities, not only in Australia but in the world. And about 12, 14 years ago, that relationship became formalised with an agreement to work together, particularly in sports science, but also in educating players, in working in the community, in working with schools. And because of our strength in sports science, of course, the Bulldogs were very keen to do it, and it's been a very successful partnership, and it's not only been successful for us and the Bulldogs locally, but it's enhanced our reputation as a university globally, so it's been fantastic for all of us.
You're certainly leading the way with this collaboration. Peter, how much of a role do you think the partnership had in that 2016 win?
Oh, a profound role, probably an understated role. When I first came back to be president in 2013, I did a tour of the facilities and saw a biomechanics lab, which is the first time I'd ever heard of that term. And next to that was a high-altitude hotel. And these are all facilities within the university, high altitude being one of the questions being studied about its efficacy as a training module. So these sort of issues like diet, sleep, training in heat, high altitude, were all things that were being prepped back in 2013, 2014. And I guess the most pithy example, I guess, of it is we were renowned in 2016 for the velocity of our handball. And, Bevo had this mantra of the handball club.
This is how quick it was, yeah.
Yeah. The decision support for that coaching initiative was actually grounded in Sam Robertson and Alice Sweeting and the sports science unit's analysis of the fact that the time between gaining possession and disposal of handball is less than 2 seconds. So there's a massive data that they assembled in a database to inform the coaches. And that sort of decision support is really where it's all about. So, that handball club and that handball velocity was a key part of that premiership, and a key support for that was the sports science relationship.
Peter, people spend most of their time, a lot of their time, working. How, from a humanistic point of view, did this help your people back in 2016 to see the fairy tale of 62 years and have Victorian University a real essential part of it? I mean, that makes this whole story so much better.
Oh, it was fantastic. Fantastic for the Western Melbourne, fantastic for Victoria University, for our staff, for our students. One of our honours students who was working with the Bulldogs at the time was actually in the coach's box on the day and through the season. Just imagine that for a young honours student. And so, yes, it's something that the university has great pride in, and it's become known that Victoria University did play a significant role in the way that Peter said, and of course that's done a lot for our reputation. And so now, FIFA, for example, we're doing work for FIFA around tracking athletes. We're doing work in the NBA and the National Basketball in America. We're doing work with Tennis Australia that's becoming internationally renowned. But it all started with this work with the Western Bulldogs. Yeah,
we saw a bit of the tennis with Julie. Similar. I mean, she could be taking on Serena Williams in the Wimbledon final tonight if it was another world.
She shan't be pursuing a tennis or AFL career, I can assure you of that. But when I was down at the Bulldogs earlier this week, I did meet with Matt and the high performance team. Talk to us about this partnership. Where do you see it going in future?
Look, I think one of the realities is that you never hold IP in any professional sport, certainly not football, for very long. So it's a matter of keeping an edge on things because all of the other clubs are catching up. Football as a sport is much more chaotic in game style than set play games like golf and baseball. But there are so many applications for sports science, whether it's in recruiting and list management and the sort of metrics that you need to make those sort of choices, training regimes, but even game style itself. It's harder than it would be to apply science to golf, for example. But that's not to say that it won't come. And so the team that does it first and does it best, they'll win more of the next 15 premierships than the ones that don't.
Yeah, well, Vice-Chancellor, if you ever get a staff member that knows how to get someone to hit a 7-iron straight, I'd love you to get him onto me, or her. But basically, let's look at that grand final in 2016 because we were talking off-air. Peter was sitting in front of you and you were sitting behind. What was that moment like when you sort of brought it all together? I know it's a big team from a football perspective and a university perspective.
Oh, it was amazing, and I had the privilege of going down onto the ground after the game and celebrating with Peter and the players. And, of course, quite a lot of the players are Victoria University students. So Easton Wood, the captain, one of our students, Mitch Wallace wasn't in the game, but he was on the ground. He came up and gave me a big hug. He'd got injured. So we've got 12 of the current AFL players are students at Victoria University. So we very much feel part of it. And that was a huge celebration.
Which I think is fantastic. Zane was saying when I spoke to him, you know, it is a great way to separate from AFL as well and throw yourself into university and have a world outside of the game, which is obviously important. But in terms of football and sports partnerships in future, where do you see it going? Do you see other clubs following now? Well,
Other clubs have followed, other clubs are following, but there are so many more things that we can do. It's increasingly to advertise yourself to future players. You know, your facilities are important, but the educational opportunities you can offer is important in the beauty contest between clubs for the best players. So we've got a real advantage because of the strength of that partnership. There are so many other things that we do in marketing and even in sports and the law, where there are synergies between the educational requirements and what we actually do. So we're scratching the surface, but the relationship between VU and the Western Bulldogs runs pretty deep, and it will for a long time.
I'd like you both to answer this question because I think it's really important for us that love sport or work in sport. Part of the issue over the course of time is to have young men or women vocationally focused beyond their playing days. Now, this relationship that Victorian University has with the Western Bulldogs, you just mentioned 13 players are going to university there. How much does this help that end goal of having them focus beyond when, you know, they're not playing anymore?
Yeah, not just beyond football, but during the time that they're doing football, to actually have something that they can fill other hours with so that they're not, for example, just looking at social media, which can have all sorts of corrosive consequences. That's really important too. And VU, in their educational programs, their lecture programs, have proven themselves to be really flexible and adaptive for our players. So it provides them with a focus during the game. It provides them with qualifications for after the game, and all of that is critically important to us.
Because, Peter, so many people feel like they're falling off a cliff when they finish playing sport.
Absolutely. And so we have an elite athlete-friendly program to support elite athletes while they are being athletes. But, yes, they do need to be ready to do something else in life. We obviously hope they're going to succeed as athletes, but they also need an education, they need a training. There's lots of evidence that education and sport performance are complementary, and we do think it's one of the reasons why the players play so well, but it's also one of the reasons why they're ready for life in a broader sense than they would otherwise be.
I guess the big question is, how do you stay ahead of the competition in terms of these partnerships, in terms of the science, in terms of everything that this collaboration's offering?
We've had, for the last, certainly the time that I've been back, the last 7 years, we've both an operational subcommittee and a research subcommittee, and on that research subcommittee is representation at the very top. So Peter and George Pappas, who's the Chancellor of the University, will regularly attend those sort of meetings, and I will too. And the board of the Bulldogs, I can say, throughout the entire time that I've been there, is absolutely committed to this sort of relationship. But I think you need that buy-in at the very top so that the people who are actually working for you understand and feel supported in it as well.
And when you speak of buy-in, I suppose from your staff's perspective, the buy-in of a football club, Broadway Act, with your staff, they must love that and make them want to work harder, to stay ahead of the game, to be that innovative individual that they can be.
Absolutely. So in university world, There's academic research and there's applied research, and they're complementary. But increasingly, people are looking to universities to make a real impact on the world, and governments want our research to make a real impact. And we're having to demonstrate to governments and the broader community that our research is having an impact. And this relationship with the Bulldogs is an outstanding example of why research matters. And we can actually help the well-being and the performance of players. And indeed, some of that research in sport can have an impact on the broader community as well. And it does through work with the Bulldogs. We have a health program for the broader community, and our researchers evaluate the health of the community. So the impact that we have both on the elite sports people and on the broader community in the West of Melbourne is something that really excites our researchers who can see the impact of the work they're doing.
Can I just add to that? One of the impacts of having that buy-in at the very top is that I know VU have a relationship with Loughborough University in the UK, which is a leading sports science university in Britain, and sometimes they'll have professors of emeritus of sport, like Clyde Williams, come out, and George and Peter will initiate roundtables with us, and we've got an immense amount from that. Now, you know, like Bevo has got to meet with Clyde Williams one-on-one and have conversations about you know, the cutting edge of this sort of coachcraft, player management going forward. So it's been immensely valuable.
I love the story. It's a fantastic story. It obviously was galvanised and it sort of hit its peak in 2016, but I think there's another peak to come. It's a win-win from every point of view. It's a win from football, it's a win for the academic world, but it's a win for sports people and those that love it. So thanks for coming on the show today.